Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joanne. Thank you so much for being with me this afternoon. And I'm really happy that we are all together to learn about a very important skill. And I think, especially with the announcement this morning, everybody is really now, we now have to up the game and we have to really continue developing our skills in this virtual work. So again, good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar on leading teams and individuals virtually on behalf of the officers and Board of Trustees of the People Management Association of the Philippines. And also, hang on, I think I forgot to start my video. Okay, so there, all right. So, okay, thank you so much for the reminder that my video was off. So I'm here now. My name is Joanne. I'll give a little more introduction about myself in a short while. So again, I was saying that I want to thank you for being with us this afternoon on behalf of the officers and Board of Trustees of People Management Association of the Philippines, our President, Luisa Mila Echevarria, and of course, our Executive Director, Rene Hiner. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. This is brought to you by Asian Institute of Human Resource Management, the training arm of PMAP. Of course, we want to thank also the President of the Asian Institute of Human Resource Management, Lucy Tariela, our officers and trustees, and to the PMAP professional staff who are all with us this afternoon, who have been working nonstop since I think the quarantine started. They had to do more work than ever, and it's really with a mission to equip all HR leaders. So my name is Joanne. I am the Managing Director of Lee Hecht Harrison Philippines, and I'm also the Master Trainer on Change Management and Accelerate Change Program of Lee Hecht Harrison, and I cover the Asia Pacific. So I train and I certify consultants and resource persons for the Asia Pacific region. You can follow me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn address is there, and also my email address is there, so you can get to know me more. I can't remember how many times I've been here on PMAP. I've been running several sessions, and I'm really happy that we are all together this afternoon. But of course, I'd like to hear about what do you expect to discuss and learn from this online session. So if you can go to the Q&A and just post there what you expect to cover in an hour and a half session, and probably we could last until 2 hours, but we are reserving 30 minutes for Q&A. And I'm also interested, what has your experience been in leading individuals and teams virtually? This is our 6th week, right? For those who are in Metro Manila, this is our 6th or 7th week, if I'm not mistaken. And we've all learned things. We did mistakes. It has been a trial and error. For me personally, it was a trial and error. There has been a lot of learning. So I want you to please go into the chat, into the Q&A box, and then please type in your expectations and your experience as well. While you're doing that, I just want to also warn you, I'm doing this from home. My husband has lovebirds, and we do have a small dog as well. So I'm apologizing in advance should they interfere with our session this afternoon. And of course, let's go through the boring stuff first. And I think we are all familiar with this one. So you've been automatically put on mute, so your audio and your video has been switched off, but you can use the chat function and also the Q&A. I put there in parentheses better because I can see if I was able to address some questions in the Q&A section. So that's really better than the chat, because we have, I think, 400 participants now. And if you send messages to the chat, it might just get buried. So it's faster and quicker for me if you send a message, your expectations and also your questions through the chat box. Now, like any other live sessions, there are technology problems. So should you be disconnected, just log in again and we will be here. But if in case I am the one who will be disconnected, I will log back in. I will be with you. Just be patient with me, but I will really try my best to join this session again. Okay, and then some more, we will have Q&A at the end of our session, but if you're seeing and the Q&A chat is a disturbance from you, you can switch it off. You just click on the chat icon and that will not be bothering you anymore. Just some reminders, we would really want to discourage, how do you call that, hacking into the chat session. If it's not related to our topic this afternoon, we would really discourage you from posting, inviting, our sessions, because we have received feedback from previous webinars that it has caused somehow it was a disturbance for them. And then just one more here. I would love to learn from you as well. We've been running or leading virtually. We have these sessions, but of course, nothing beats real experience. So I will share with you what I have learned. I would also love to learn from you. And let's come together. We are all leaders here. We are all people leaders, people managers. Would be good to learn and to come up. I mean, how nice would it be, right? To be in a community of leaders who continue to learn, to reach out, and we learn from each other. So please do send in your suggestions, your comments. But if you have any questions, just send it anytime. But we will have a Q&A portion at the end of our session. Okay, so for those who are not familiar with LHH, we are into consulting. We do support people, and of course, we are all familiar. We all know and acknowledge that it's really our greatest resource. So we are into workforce advisory. We have assessments, career transition, leadership programs, change management, and coaching programs as well. And our mission is to partner with you so that you would be able to achieve your results, especially when you are going through a transition. For many years now, we have been into career transition or outplacement. We have supported employee separation notifications here in the Philippines since 2001, globally, more than 50 years now. And I am so happy. We are also happy because recently we have been named a top leadership training company by Training Industry. It's a leading source of information, insights, and resources on the business of learning. We have more than 400 offices in 70 countries and more than 3,000, almost 5,000 coaches and consultants now. For the Philippines, we started in 2001. And since then, almost 20 years now, we have partnered with more than 500 companies, and we have supported more than 50,000 individuals, whether they go through change, they have to move their company, they have to exit their company, or they have to be developed for future leadership roles. And we support different levels, from presidents, expats, to shop floor employees. We support one, we support thousands. And we also have operated 6 dedicated centers, which is just for volume companies. So the biggest one was for one company where they had to exit 3,000 employees, and we established a center for them. Okay, let's now go to what we expect to learn or discuss in our session today. Thank you so much for those who sent in their questions. I want to learn and get some best practices in helping my people leading virtually. Thank you so much. And we also have here challenge and monitoring people. Yeah, especially the ones who are not we're not able to look behind their back anymore. So how do we monitor them? And also, of course, we have here how do we prepare for remote work psychologically? That's a question that we have in the Q&A. And also managing a team remotely, tracking their performance. How do we ensure quality of work without compromising and ensuring team members are using their time efficiently and effectively? How can we maximize web meetings during lockdown? Yes, that's very critical. And actually, just the other day, I had a call from a senior leader, and their challenge was they do not have any, they've never had any experience, no training on virtual meetings. And that has been a cause of headache for the senior leadership team of this big company, because they would hear the dogs, in fact, even what their ulam was for lunch. So that was quite a headache for them, and we had to intervene. And we're having the session with them this afternoon. So it's really virtual meeting. And for some, that may be too basic, but really now that we are in this new normal, the more that it was emphasized that we have to do it effectively and also efficiently. So let's go very quickly. Just what do we achieve to cover this afternoon? So we'll talk about I have seen a lot of webinars on leading. I've seen a lot of webinars on virtual protocols, and we'll also just come together and discuss what has worked and what did not work. So therefore, we want to identify and minimize virtual communication and collaboration challenges. And also, of course, we can do that if we will identify the best practices to overcome them. What are the benefits of working virtually? What are the benefits of the different technologies? But also, of course, what are the challenges? And when do we know that it's time for email, it's time for a virtual call? Which one do we use? How do we lead meetings? Meeting face to face is already a challenge, right? Especially if you have conflicting ideas. Now, what do you do if you have to meet virtually? You can't see them, you can't hear them well, and sometimes we have technology problems. So how do we do that? So therefore, our ultimate objective is to learn some practical tips on how we can manage productivity in a virtual environment. And to do that, our discussion guide, and I say discussion guide because really, I mean, wherever the discussion would go, if you have pressing questions, then let's come together and let's talk about it and let's hear and learn from each other. So to guide us in this 2-hour session, we'll talk about working virtually. Then we will go into leading virtually, and also at the end is meeting virtually. So those are our coverage for this afternoon. And I have seen the questions. Thank you so much for your answers. We will start our session. And of course, like any other session, we start with a definition. So what is a virtual team? I have here, I will not go through that anymore, but it's really different. I mean, individuals, we are brought together, we come together. And what's different here is that we now have to use telecommunications and information technology for us to do our objective. So in the office, in the face-to-face setting, we have goals, we have our assignments. Now, a virtual team is we now have a platform that we have to use, a technology platform that we have to use to make it happen. And what are the benefits of virtual working? Now, I'd like to invite you from, we have 425 people in virtual room now. If you can share with me, especially the ones who've been doing this we all have been doing this for a number of weeks now. What worked for you? What has been the benefits that you have seen? How did it work for you? Can you share it? Just use the chat, the Q&A, because that's what I can see more than the chat room. And I apologize, I talked so fast. Thank you for calling my attention. I will slow down. So yes. All right, so can I have some sharing? What has worked for you? Oh, yes, no need to commute. Thank you for sharing that. And there was a comment here that said, always pen and paper. Yes, in the past, it has always been on paper. Now we have to do it via computer. In fact, just to share with you, one thing that I had to adjust was when I have to read a volume of documents, I sometimes prefer reading it on paper. But now I have limited paper, and so I had to make sure I'm able to read it in my computer. All right, so yeah, so benefits, able to do household chores, flexible arrangements. You can work anywhere. If you need privacy, you can go to your room, you can step out. Yes, thank you so much. Virtually, some are more conscious about output. That's true, because I have heard that as well, where people working from home, they really feel that they now have to do more. And so they've been more conscious about output. Although we also have to admit that on the other hand, that is also causing burnout, because we're not able to drawing the line between personal and work is also difficult. So that's also a challenge there. But more time with family, no traffic, no travel time. What I really loved in the morning is having time to work out rather than spending. I leave an hour or 2 hours if traffic is bad from Makati, where I work. And I mean, now I can spend that time traveling. So yes, thank you so much for your sharing. I really appreciate that you are participating in our discussion. Lowered office costs, that's true. In fact, yesterday I was meeting with our leaders and our discussion now was about our real estate expense. So, okay, yes, all right. So thank you so much. I can work in shorts when our participants said here, very true, very comfortable. That's one of the benefits of I just have to say it as well that a friend said that he had to dress up the other day and he was so surprised that his clothes were does not fit him anymore. So be careful there as well. Okay, so thank you so much. Meeting while biking. Yes, so hitting several birds with one stone. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your sharing. And we have all seen it, right? So in fact, for the others, being able to spend more time with family, we have seen a lot of positive impact on job satisfaction. So, and one also said that because they have talents who are in a different location, there's no more limitation to engage them or to get them as an employee. So they were able to get the talents that they needed for their company. And it was okay that he did not have to come to Manila. So that was one of the greatest sharing that he shared with me, and he was so excited about it. So okay, there's a message that there's no audio. I'm not sure if Ishi and Jeff, you're there. I received a message that there's no audio. So if you can, please check out. Okay, so some are here can hear me. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for the ones who gave a feedback. Let's continue. Okay, now I have a poll. I just want to get your thoughts on, given the challenges and also, of course, the benefits, what do you think are the skills that's most critical for everyone? And there's a typo error on my slide. Apologies for that. What do you think is the most critical skill so that we can work effectively in a virtual environment? Jeff, can you please launch our poll? And I would love to hear the responses of our participants now in our session. So we have 450 in the call now. I would love to please choose what you think is the most critical skill so that we can work virtually. Is it communication? Is it teamwork? Is it cooperation, relationship building, being tech savvy? Or if there's a skill that I was not able to mention here, please do type it in our chat room. Teamwork and cooperation. Yes, thank you. So please choose, go to the poll, click your answer, and then let's look at what does the majority think about the most critical skill for everyone to work in a virtual environment. So can, Jeff, are we ready to show the answer? Okay, so communication, we have 51% responses in terms of communication. And then we have teamwork and cooperation, being tech savvy, and then of course, relationship building. Thank you so much for your responses. Let's talk more about those skills in a short while. And we will do build up on what you have shared in our poll this afternoon, because for LHH, we actually came up with this based on a survey that working effectively in a virtual environment would require us to have the right skills. And these days, it was we experienced that this was heightened all the more. This is now being demanded more from us as compared to when we were back in the office. Of course, technology is very important, and also processes. So let's talk about these three things and let's try to understand what can we do so that we would be able to work in the virtual setting right now. First is, of course, skills. So working in the virtual world in a virtual way requires strong communication skills. So thank you so much for the ones who said about who when you gave the response on communication skill. Creating clear, complete, and compelling messages and communicating them through the correct channel. I have to highlight that through the correct channel will help us achieve our desired goal. So virtual working offers, working virtually, it includes an increased use of instant messaging, email, and we can see a lot of misunderstanding. And I'm not sure if you have experienced that. So as for me, I saw that. And we have to be more skilled at delivering difficult or sensitive messages in more lean mediums. We'll talk about lean mediums in a short while. Teamwork and cooperation, some of you also shared your thoughts about this. People are not together physically anymore. There's a high tendency for individuals or siloed thinking in virtual teams. So we don't see each other. We can't get up and just go to the across the room. So we don't see anymore. And silo is really more prevalent now. Everybody, not just the leader, everyone in the team needs to reinforce behaviors like cooperation and caring about team members. I want to say that working effectively is a responsibility and accountability of every level, of every individual across different levels. You don't just rely on your leaders to do this. Everybody has to do it. So when we complain about something, he's not doing this, he's not communicating it, we also have to check in and am I giving the feedback that I am not able to understand, that I need information. So everybody, that is our accountability. And then of course, going into relationship building, there are fewer natural opportunities for relationship building now, lunch out, coffee breaks. So therefore we need to design and encourage opportunities for relationship building. We have to be intentional in doing that. Relationships can seem less important when people are not working physically together because we can just isolate or avoid people more easily. We can just opt, I will not answer the phone. I can just say I was sleeping or I was doing something else, or I will not call, I will not pick up the call, I will not attend the meeting, I have technology problem, it's choppy, or I don't have signal, I don't have internet. But that will that will cause more division in the team. So we have to be intentional in really bridging people together. And also, of course, it's very important. We have to be tech savvy. Using technology is really very critical now to working in a virtual world. We have to be aware of all the tools available for communication and collaboration, and we have to know how to use them effectively. So we have to learn what is an effective and efficient way of using technology. And then, of course, going into technology, at the minimum, we really have to have basic technology skill. It's very important now to work in this online or virtual world, online meetings, video conferencing, instant messaging, emails, sharing files. We don't have IT with us all the time now. And there was one team I was supporting wherein they had one IT for a team of, I think, 40 people, and everybody needed help. And it was just so challenging for the IT because he was just one. So everybody had to really learn how to do basic troubleshooting, how to connect the wires in their computer, what does cache mean, what does delete cookies mean. So everybody had to really up their game. So that's very important for us. We have to be open to technology because it's now the world of work. And we can't say anymore, I don't want you to do that. So it's there. And then the processes, we can communicate well. We can probably be having the right technology, using it very well. But to ensure that teamwork is efficient and effective, we're having a common process that's widely understood and widely used by everybody is very critical. And I have seen that with the common conversations I had with friends, with clients, not having a process was emphasized during this time. So people were doing things ahead of the other person. And it's easy in the office because you can get up and say, oh, here's a document that you needed. And then the other person will pick it up and then move with the next step. In a virtual setting, we don't know if the other person has started to do what he's supposed to do. And so some people would start to do it on their own. And it has created conflict. Of course, I have also seen best practices, very solid, very strong processes, and very good collaboration, very good culture in terms of sharing and trusting and decision-making and also conflict resolution. And it has worked fantastically for them. So these are the things that we have to be mindful of if we want to be effective in this virtual environment. There is a study, I was trying to look for it, I was not able to find it, but I recall that it says that if we move the desk of people in the office, they will interact less. And so therefore the relationship will weaken. I'm not sure if you have experienced it where you probably had to move to another office and another department had to be in a different site, or you had to move to a different floor, a different area in the office, and you would only now see each other probably in the elevator or once every blue moon in the canteen or in the pantry. And you really don't, I mean, it's you see each other less than you used to, and it has somehow had an effect on your relationship. Can you imagine now in this virtual reality, we don't see each other, we don't talk that often anymore. So what would happen to the relationships that we were trying to build when we were in the office? So relationship building in this virtual reality is more important than ever. But it's not that easy. Can I also just go to that chat room and share with me and everyone here what has been the challenges, what were your experiences in leading and leading individuals and teams? What did you experience? What did you encounter? Can you share that with us through our Q&A? Okay. Yeah, I thank you for the question. We'll get back to that in a short while. So if you can share conscious effort to reach out. Yes, so it's a challenge, lack of cooperation, miscommunication. I see that quite a lot. Yes, thank you so much for sharing. Yes, you can send in through chat your responses to our question in terms of challenges in leading virtually. Thank you so much for your responses. Technical issues, quite a lot. And in some cases, the technical issues will create relationship issues because you're not able to call, you have poor connection, misdirection. So yes, thank you so much for your responses. Okay, let's just put it together. These are what we have seen in our experience, the common challenges in terms of virtual leadership. We have leading individuals and leading teams. So relationship building, I think I saw this in the expectation earlier, monitoring task progress, helping the employee feel connected to the organization, especially if the employee is new to the company and you were not able to do, you did not have enough time to onboard and also to establish relationship between the new employee and your old employees. I have seen that happen as well. Miscommunication, a lot of you share that in our chat room. Leading teams, building strong cohesion, trust in teams. Thank you for the ones who shared. Misalignment of goals. And I think there was someone who said about team huddles that you're not able to really talk about the issues that much anymore because of course technology and you don't have much time. So now what do we do when we are faced with these challenges? In LHH, I'll share with you this framework on leading virtually. As a leader, you are responsible for working with individuals and your team to achieve desired goals. This can be a challenge because even in a face-to-face environment, it's not that easy even when we were back in the office. But when you work virtually and supporting people and teams can be even more challenging. So we have this framework, and we're hoping that this would be able to help leaders and also everyone across the organizations on how we can lead our people virtually. Nowadays, there's really more pressure on leaders, different levels, not just the topmost leaders, because it's really very important for us where whatever our position will be, whatever our level may be, there's now a spotlight on how we are handling this leadership challenge that's really we're all faced with. So let's talk about these framework, these steps. So let's go to the first one. We really, this starts by making sure that team members are clear on organizational and also team priorities. Without clear line of sight, people will not prioritize the right work. And since you have less visibility on how team members are spending their time, the risk of working on the wrong things will be higher. So you should ensure visibility on workflow. Team members has to understand who they need input from to complete tasks and who is impacted by the work that they do. So when I say processes, some they say that we don't have budget for for monitoring and to invest on these tools to monitor what our people are doing, to invest on workflow technology. I say use as simple as a Gantt chart in a simple Excel file. You don't if we are, especially now that we are all watching our budget in our companies, there are a lot of ways that we can do all these things without really spending that much. So I was just with one manager the other week where we worked on a simple Excel file and we just did a simple RASI exercise. So many of you may be familiar with this, and there's a lot of material on RASI over the internet, and you can go on and check it out. So here, there are many examples that you can use in terms of processes and identifying accountabilities. And this is just one. So who's responsible? After can be as simple as for example, the other day, I also remember a conversation with the manager. We were talking about overtime form, because in the office they would have, and I think many of us are familiar, we will log in and the system will automatically capture the information of our timing and time out. Working from home, they were not able to make any investments on virtual timesheets or virtual time monitoring systems. So they had to come up with what can we do. It was causing a lot of challenges for them, and so it was what we had to brainstorm. And just to make the long story short, an Excel file. The employee has to inform the manager, this is my work schedule for today and extending because there is this meeting beyond office hours. Where to whom will he submit the OT? What will the manager do upon receiving the Excel file or the OT form? So as simple as that. From whom will I wait? Organizing an event, I have to wait for a proposal. Who will approve the proposal? Who will? So you just go through each of the steps and then identify who's responsible. It can be as simple as that. We don't really have to. I was in one webinar wherein a manager of a large company talked about how they were doing it in the virtual world. And it was just really fascinating because they had sophisticated technology. And not everybody, not all of us has the capability to invest in sophisticated technology. But don't fret. We do not allow yourself to be discouraged, because there are a lot of tools that we can use so that we will be able to put in or to document processes that our team can observe and follow to minimize confusion in our team. So that's step one. Going into step two, you have to be mindful of what is the right communication medium. I've read this in your chat, in your Q&A, that one of the biggest challenges now for us virtual workers is selecting the right communication medium. There tends to be an over-reliance of email, or I may also email or Viber, and it's not always the best choice. A communication channel has high richness when it's able to convey non-verbal and verbal cues. So it's like the movie, two-dimension, 3D, or it's a 4D movie. So you have to look at your communication of your message in that perspective as well. Is this a simple message, a 1D, where there are no other layers, no other levels, like the emotion or the complex thinking process? When you are able to determine the best process, it allows the accurate feedback, and from the receiver to the sender and back to the receiver, so that you can modify your message to ensure that everybody gets the intended message. Face-to-face communication is, at the top in terms of richness communication. So what you see on my chart here is, on the left side, you have your lean medium to reach medium. So, and then you have on the bottom side is the environment, the communication environment. So routine is simple data, but you also have ambiguous data at the far end. Face-to-face is at the end. You can see the expression, you can see the nonverbal cues, you can get feedback immediately from the receiver, and you're able to immediately adjust your message and style so that you would be able to deliver what you wanted to say. In a virtual world, this is replaced by an online meeting or video conference where Some people are not comfortable switching their cameras on. Right now, I am not seeing you. You can see me. I don't know if you're with me, if you're happy, if you have questions. So that becomes a challenge. And in meetings, I'm sure you have probably gone into meetings where you're the one who's talking and you don't know how the other person is reacting. The other day, just to share with you, there was one workshop wherein the participant got I think he had technology problem, and then he said something that was offensive to the trainer, and that was taken really it was not taken well. So that's one. It was just one piece of the message, but actually there was a bigger event happening to the person, and that is a challenge now in the virtual world. So you have to be mindful of what kind of medium would help you deliver your message. You have to, for example, lean media like email works in routine situations. So simple conversation, simple message, common expectations. So for example, you have to approve this, or it's not that complicated. But rich media, this is where you would now probably have conflict or some issues. You have to make a decision. You have to do some brainstorming. You have to look at different perspectives. You now go into a different medium. So you have to determine whether this is a message that will work for email, for text, or should I pick up the phone and have a conversation with a person? Should I or a video conference? Let's get on a virtual meeting and let's talk about this issue. Choosing the wrong medium, it reduces communication effectiveness. When the situation is routine or clear, such as holding a special meeting, would seem like a waste of time. So then you can use another method. So like the one I shared earlier, they have now a new overtime form. Once that was approved, it's now really a matter of sending. So email it. But a different discussion such as do we use this form? Is this relevant? Is this important? That would require a different medium. And I think when we went into even before we had this virtual world, as simple as texting or a messenger, we knew that a lot of conflict can happen. We can misinterpret words. So that's why we had to pick up the phone, have a conversation, or go on a video call, look at the face of the person. How are they behaving when you are delivering a certain message? So you have to have the wisdom to choose the right communication. It's not just what you're comfortable with, but what will work in that setting. And then, of course, mentioning about technology, you have to be mindful of what's available for you. Are you going to use email? Are you going to use Google Hangout? Are you going to use WhatsApp or Zoom or WebEx? And then you get into an understanding that these are the tools that you would use for meetings, for emails, or for simple messages. You need to have a protocol on what you will use. Thank you for the ones who shared here. A lot of social media application, that is correct. Google Sheets, Google Charts. Thank you so much for sharing that. We can do a lot. We can be very creative in making sure that we're able to achieve our objectives and also to communicate what we want to deliver. And then I just want to quickly also launch this. Jeff, if you're with me, can you please launch the poll on how effective are the people in your organization in using technology tools to communicate and collaborate? So Jeff, if you can launch that poll right now. So let me know if your team members or your leaders and all the employees are all experts, or you would say they're okay, they're doing it good, so they're using it effectively, but some are great, but there's also a significant number that's struggling. Or would the people in your team or in your organization need some training? So just let us know. Again, we would love to hear your experience, so do share in the chat box. And also later on when we go into our sharing, we can probably hear some of you and share in we love to hear you and share your experience. So, okay, so Jeff, if you can show us now the results of our poll, and let's see how okay, so, all right, so some are great and others struggle. Most people use technology effectively, and we have a smaller group who says they're all experts, and some also said you could use some training. I would love to hear from the ones who said they're all experts. I would personally want to learn how you're doing that. And of course, we have here a big majority who says that there are still some areas for improvement. And let's continue to learn. Let's continue to do. Let's not be afraid to test. I always say there was it's not mine. I read it over the internet. It says speed over perfection. So do it, respond to it, be timely, and then let's try to assess it later on. Let's not be so focused on perfect because we might not be able to do it at all. So just really get onto it, try it. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And let's see if it works. If it does not work, then it will not work. In my own team, we had to do some experiments also, of course, and we had to find out what will work best for us. So do that as well. Okay, let's try to continue. So thank you so much for responding. And we have here majority are still have a lot to learn. So probably if you can send to me via chat what technology you're using at your company for your communication, and we'll also see what kind of technology would be better. We'll talk more about the chart I shared with you earlier. Just send in through the chat room. What do you have? We might also learn from you. But let's continue our discussion in terms of the technology. So I have here a chart. What tool is what I'll have here, a very few. I listed down some tools. When do you use it? And also I have here examples of best practices. So let's get into that. Email. And I think we are all using email. We're all familiar with this one. But the question is, when do we use email? Because it really just can't be email all the time. Thank you for the one who responded. You have, I have not known Slack. I found out about it just when we went into this work from home. So we don't know everything. Zoom, Skype, Viber, MS Teams, MS Outlook. Thank you for sharing SharePoint. Telegram. Okay. All right. I'm not sure if you're referring to the paper telegram that we used to. I'm not sure if the younger ones are also familiar with that, unless there is now a more advanced tool that's called Telegram. So do educate me, but that did bring a smile to my face. Oh, really? I'm not familiar. Okay, after this, I will go into that and check out that app Telegram. Thank you. See, we're learning, so we have to. I will check that out. Okay, I'm familiar with most. So if your boss loves Telegram, thank you for sharing. I will check that out. Okay, so let's continue. Really, board games. Okay, okay, nice, interesting. Thank you. See, so a lot of tools, especially nowadays, quite a lot of technology came out and some are just really fantastic. So don't just focus on TikTok. So do other things, okay? There's just a lot. So let's go to email. Okay, so when do we use email? You use email for simple and short messages that's familiar or easy to understand topics. And if there are multiple or external people involved, okay? So that's when you use it. Best practice, avoid using it for complex or long messages on less familiar topics. So get on the phone if it's already more than 2 paragraphs. So have a discussion, okay? So if it's easy to read and easy to understand, then of course you send an email as well. But there are also cases wherein the person need to digest the information you are sending, contracts, for example. So you send an email, then you now say, let's get on the phone after you have gone through this document and let us discuss. So don't say, give me your, especially if you need to settle certain aspects. So don't rely on email because you might have more miscommunication. Then instant messaging. So quite a lot of instant messaging tools, short, two-way or time-sensitive communications. Look at the person's status. If online, then go send a message. I would also have to say, be mindful of the work hours of the person. Not because we are working from home, it doesn't mean that everybody is on 24/7. So does not mean that the person will be online in the internet all the time and you just send, whatever time you prefer. Be mindful as well. We also have to respect the time and the work style of the person. So send when you think it's appropriate. Don't send at 11 p.m. when the person works at 8 to 4 or 8 to 5. So let's also have that proper style when to send the message. Be mindful of that as well. And then online meeting platforms. So when topic is longer, it's more sensitive, less familiar, or especially when you still have to build the relationship. So get on an online platform. And I just want to say this, be comfortable with video, okay? Switch on the video, look at the person in the eye, and have a conversation. I have noticed that many of the people I've worked with are not comfortable switching on the video. Nowadays, we have to be comfortable switching on the video and having this open conversation over any other platform that we could use. So, and then another one is file sharing. So multiple people are required. I think there was some of you who shared about Google Sheets. Yes, you can do that so that you also don't skip on, sending back and forth files. When you have to, you can do it on real time and work on it real time. So when you're using this, it ensures that people have the proper rights to view or edit the document, and real time they can see what's happening. So you can also do that and go into the chat. There is a lot of sharing on the chat about tools that you can use. Later on, we can exchange that as well. So just really be mindful. This is not a comprehensive list of all the tools and the technology, but the key message here is that you have to have the wisdom, like any other leadership expectations. We need to know when is there a proper timing and what is the proper method of sending communication. So be mindful of that. Research, find out, ask, and also you can also be open to feedback as well. What do you think? What happened? What did work? What can we improve on? So that you would be able to make improvements as you progress. So do that, okay? And then step 4 is you have to be purposeful now. I have seen a lot of fun, exciting team building activities over the internet. Just this morning, I was in a charade. I think we call it charade, when you draw something and other people would guess what you're drawing, and that's fun. So it felt like we were together in one room. So we had that game. So we do that, and you have to make sure that it happens. Don't rely on chance, okay? Don't say, oh, we get into meetings and that's it. Nag-uusap naman kami. Sometimes we hear that even in during the normal work life we had before this quarantine. Nag-uusap naman kami. But actually, you need to have meaningful conversation. You need to encourage people to come together and have a conversation, because you have to remember that if you do not spend time, if you are not intentional in establishing relationship, establishing trust, then you would have a challenge, especially if you are not always together. You have to make time for relationship building, because relationships and trust are very important now that we are working virtually. Where relationships are already strong, then you maintain it, you strengthen it. For relationships that are less strong or it's really more transactional, then make sure that you give it time, pick up did I get, was I just disconnected? Okay, so I was disconnected, and thank you. Okay. All right, so I got disconnected. Thank you for calling my attention. I kept on talking here. I wonder at which part I lost you, but let's get back to our discussion. This is live. Thank you for that feedback. So yeah, so I was just sharing that we have to be intentional. Even if you do have these tools that measure productivity, you have to build on trust. Okay, so you have to make sure you are able to focus that. There's a book, I'm sure many of you are familiar about the book of Covey on trust, the speed of trust, if I remember it correctly. So the more trust in the team, the faster you're able to deliver, to move forward, and to achieve your objectives. That's really the engine. It's not the tools. It's not the technology that you're using. It's the culture, the trust in the team, in the relationship. So you make sure you spend that. Now I will be sharing some tips, like what I have here now is when you assign tasks, because it can also be a reason of confusion and conflict. So many of the comments I have heard is, hindi ko naintindihan, hindi naman niya sinabi. So I'm sharing here a very simple a template on assigning tasks. So be clear, what is the task? Why are you delegating the task? Why is that important? And also how do you expect the task to be delivered? What's the standard? When will that be delivered? And how is this task in relation to the other responsibilities? Is this urgent, or can this wait until next week? And what will the person need as well? Now, I want to also, on the last bullet here, how and when you will check in, I added 2 bullets where ability and motivation are low. Check in frequently. Okay, so more formal. So, but if the ability or the motivation is high, check in less frequently. Trust them. Be a coach, but don't be behind their back all the time. So trust them that they will deliver. Allow them to find their own way, and then they will deliver. But if they need guidance and they need a more coaching, be there. Check in frequently with them. So I added that because sometimes we just assume that they know what they're supposed to do. So check on the ability and also the motivation. So ability, the skill level, or the interest level as well. Okay, so that's a quick tip there. Now, when you're leading teams, very quickly as well, you need to develop communication governance. So what needs to be communicated, who will communicate, and how will it be communicated? Is this information for everyone? Is this, do I have to inform, do I have to consult, who should make the decision? What is the process for providing feedback? What is the process for getting feedback as well? You have to say it, you have to be clear about it. I will send this message, read through it, then please get back to me on this day with your feedback on this. And what kind of feedback are you looking for? And there also has to be a process for resolving conflict. So you also have, we can't just, approach the person who's in the next room and, talk about it. But we're not aware that the person already has issues. So we have to make sure we're able to find out if there are conflict, if there are issues, and what are we also going to do if there are issues. So you have to, as a leader, that's a challenge that everybody should be mindful of. Key tool, when you're using the what, the why, and the how framework, you have to be able to clarify what is the situation, what is the opportunity, and what are you doing? Why is that important, and what are the next steps? And just some example. So for example, all of a sudden, you now want to, first quarter is finished, and you want to do an assessment. Where are you? The other day I was with an HR manager, and it was really, they had a survey where they are, so, and what they needed to develop so that they would be able to be better in this virtual world. So they created a survey, but she had to communicate what was the purpose, what was she doing. So she conducted a skills and competency assessment, and she had to explain why. Otherwise, people, I always say it, especially when it's a new thing, it's a change. You have to be able to explain the rationale, okay? So, and then you also have to be mindful of what are the next steps, what are the timelines. So it's a questionnaire, will take 5 minutes, what happens, and then what will you do with the data? So you have to be clear on that. Do not assume that they know. In times of change, and we always say this, especially in our change management workshop, always people will say they did not communicate. So better to over communicate, better to over deliver and be heard more often during these times. Okay, so you have to be more intentional in being heard, in sending messages, in getting in touch with your people, and you have to be more intentional in communicating all these: the what, the why, the how, when, who. Of course, we are all familiar with the 5 wives and the 1 husband. So you have to be mindful of that, because otherwise, people, you will have a lot of confusion, you will have a lot of questions, and therefore you will have conflict. Sometimes people will not talk to you, and you're not aware that they already have issues against you. So unless you are intentional in getting all these issues out, you will not be able to address that. So when you go back to the office, we'll just be surprised we no longer have a team. So yes, thank you so much. Remind them from time to time. Now, I have seen that, especially during this virtual work setup, that what has been more difficult, common across everybody, is feedback. Um, and we will talk about feedback because we now have to be more deliberate. We now have to really exert an effort on giving feedback. Yes, you have to be open and you have to be transparent. Now, how do we do that? Because I also know that some people will use it and say, I really want I'm just being open, so I'll say this. And it's not really effective, and it caused more problem than intended. So let's talk about feedback. In this virtual world, how can we give feedback and how can we also receive feedback? I have here a questionnaire. This is really from our leadership program. Go through it very quickly and just, on your mind, just put a check on a statement that applies to you. I'm often hesitant to ask for feedback. I am defensive when I receive a feedback. I see listening to feedback as giving other people undue power. So I don't want them to give me feedback because it's like they have power over me. Or even when it's positive, do you find the feedback to be too vague? Like, you did a good job, or you did a good presentation. So it's not really helping you. Or you can say, it was just really a form of flattery. So does that also apply to you? When you perceive feedback as true, are you ready? And do you act on it? Thank you for those who shared. Yes, feedback is a gift. And but not everybody, I have seen this, that not everybody knows how to receive it and how to give it, or is also that open to give and to receive feedback. So in a virtual setting, we have to be more comfortable with feedback because that will really establish trust. Earlier about the question on trust, giving and receiving feedback would be very important in establishing a culture of trust. So let's try to very quickly, let's just have a quick review on what is feedback. And it was created during World War II, and the purpose was that if it was used on ships and submarines, and the purpose was that if ever they go off course, they go off track, there's a mechanism that would send a message to them so that they would go back on track. So, and since then, it has been applied to human work and also in the world of work, because we now want to use it as a guide, as a means to guide behavior. So it's true, it could either make things better or it can make things worse. So what we want to happen is to make things better. And so we have to learn how to, you are absolutely correct. We have to deliver feedback in the most efficient manner, in the effective manner, so that it will serve its purpose. We have to have the correct mindset when we are giving feedback. As a manager, we can provide feedback to help people stay on target. So when someone on our team is doing something well, or we want them to change a behavior, we can provide helpful information to assess the individual, understand the behavior and the impact. And when we give this type of feedback, it's a positive feedback. It will encourage the individual to repeat the behavior. Be careful, though, that we are not delivering a praise that is not clear, all right? So it's about helping people understand specifically why something they did was great, because we want them to do it again. All right. So later on, what is specific? What is clear? Thank you for the ones who shared here. I love this group. Okay, so the other mindset that we have is we want them to get back on target. So when someone on our team is struggling, or there's a behavior that we want to stop or to discourage or to change, we provide helpful information to assist the person in understanding the behavior and its impact. So this type of feedback will help the individual determine how to change the behavior and get back on target. That's why it says it's a gift. Right, it has to be given timely. Thank you so much. Jean is here. I love it when you are in all our learning sessions. The other mindset that we have to be mindful of in terms of effective feedback is we want the individual to move the target. So when someone in our team is tracking well, doing well, providing feedback will be helpful to help them stretch themselves or do better or create new expectations or to grow some more. It's important to balance providing all three types of feedback because we want to create a culture of feedback on our teams so that people will want to work with each other, with you, and also with their team members. So we have to equip our team members on how to give and also to make them comfortable on receiving feedback. All right. So, but the question is, how comfortable are we when we are giving feedback? I've also seen a lot of leaders who would just, he'll change, or sometimes hopefully he would realize what he's doing. And sometimes when we ask, did you tell him? Did you tell her? No, because he's not open, or there would be other reasons. But we have to be comfortable on giving feedback. I have here on the screen statements, and just do a self-check or do self-assessment. Am I afraid to tell people the truth because it might hurt them, or it might anger them, and I don't want to offend them? They will not listen. Hindi naman makikinig yan. Hayaan mo na lang yan. Or they will not. We don't know how to deliver it. Or sometimes we're afraid that we will be blamed, or it will be us who will, ikaw naman may kasalanan, ikaw ang leader ko, you did not prepare me, or you're not ready to justify your comments, or you don't have enough relationship, or it's interfering with their success. And so these are just some questions that I want you to use as you self-reflect in terms of giving feedback. Now, I'll share with you, this is, I think someone said here about the SBI model. Thank you for sharing that. I'd love to hear about your experience in terms of that model in giving feedback. So I'll share it with everybody here, and hopefully we would learn from the ones who are experienced. So this is the SBID model. So it's the situation, the behavior, the impact, and then we have the D, which is discovery. So it's really it's a useful framework for giving feedback. So situation, we describe the situation when the behavior occurred. Behavior, objectively describe the behavior. And I like what Honey said, give it tactfully. So your pace and your tone voice should be calm when you're delivering the message. Of course, we also have to do a check-in. There's another aspect of giving feedback and receiving feedback, which is the EQ aspect, and that's a different topic. I is for impact, describe the impact of the behavior, and D is ask a question to engage the individual in a discussion, so that either he would come to a realization he has to change or he has to improve, stay on course. Now let's talk more about these model. You have to provide a context. So let's go through this step by step. Under the S, the situation, provide the context on when and where the situation occurred. By sharing information about the situation, you ensure that the context is clear to the recipient. Yes, you are correct, Carmela. It needs practice. You need to be comfortable. You have to be open to practice to that. So thank you so much. Yes, situation, provide observable behaviors, not assumptions. Perfect. Yes, so you have to say, I'd like to talk to you about the Tuesday meeting. Thank you so much for that sharing. And then B is behavior. This step addresses what specifically the person did. So the key here is to describe the behavior in a tangible and factual way. It's critical to provide an objective and specific statement of the behavior. Do not generalize. For example, you communicated a lot of data without any visuals. That's generalization, okay? So you are correct. It should promote improvement, and positive feedback should promote confidence, and it should make them be excited about doing things better. And then of course, I is you share the impact of the behavior. So never assume that the impact of the behavior is obvious. A team member may fail to appreciate the impact of his actions on the rest of the team, the manager, or other stakeholders. Sharing the impact of the behavior is very important because that will help the individual stay on target, or move the target, or yeah, target the error for improvement, and it's not the person. So for example, people were not able to recall all of the information because you made it hard to answer the questions. There were the questions you posed about implications. So that's an example. Now D is a step that's meant to engage the individual in a dialogue. So it's really more like a coaching skill. So you go into the conversation, you give feedback, and you want to engage a dialogue. It's not just you sharing, but you also want the person to also reflect and think about what he can do moving forward. So here, questions can be used to gain further understanding of the behavior or help the individual reflect on the feedback and identify how to move forward. Yes, we have to allow the receiver to look for solutions so they can improve themselves. Asking a discovery question is very important when we are delivering feedback to help someone either stay on target or get back on target. So an example here, how could we make sure people will understand and remember the data better next week? So that's just an example. Let's talk more. Let's have more example. And I really appreciate all the sharing here. Yes, situation must be verified and confirmed. You can't just say, lagi ka na lang sumisigaw. That's difficult. Or lagi ka na lang late. You can't do that. So in our example here, last week in our meeting with the team this morning, I noticed that you prepared your presentation in advance. You did some research. It helps speed on terms of impact. So what? It helps speed up the discussion and clarify the challenges. And so when you go to discovery, here's a question. What helped you in the preparation stage? Can you walk me through? Can you talk me through what you did to prepare? So that's just an example. This is a positive situation. The other one is a negative feedback. In our meeting this morning, your voice was low and weak. It appeared that you were not sure of what you were presenting. It had an effect on your credibility. What was on your mind when you were presenting? Or you can also ask, what can I do to help you? I agree with you. Do not use blanket statements and have specific examples when you are giving feedback. So those are that's a very important tool, especially now. So when we don't hear from people at the end of the day. So let's say, for example, I will send it to you at this day, and then we don't hear from them. That's feedback as well. Or there are just a lot of things, or they're doing it earlier than scheduled. So we also have to give the feedback so that they would be able to do it again and continue or sustain the behavior. So there's really a lot of things that we have to communicate now in this virtual setting because we don't see each other. So feedback will help either continue the behavior that we want them to do or correct it. And we don't just rely on hopefully the person would realize what he's doing, but we have to give a feedback so that they would be able to get back on track. And as a leader in this virtual world, we need to have the courage and also, of course, the skill to give a feedback. So that's very important. So thank you so much. But the other thing that we have to prepare for, we have to learn, is also conflict management. What do we do? I have seen a lot of conflict happen in this virtual setting. So I'll also share with you a framework that we use in LHA's accountable manager program. So it's a conflict resolution. And there are 3 steps here. We determine the root cause, we identify the common goals, and we brainstorm options. So let's talk about the 3 steps. So when we determine the root cause, it would be good if you will have on your own self-learning. So try to conflict resolution is very difficult. It's really not it's not easy, but as leaders, these are the kind of conversations that we have to prepare for. It's not always a happy situation, and as leaders, it's up to us to address conflict, to address behavior that we have to improve, or it's also our responsibility to help people develop themselves. And one of that is, how do we manage it? What do we do when there's conflict? That's why this is very important. And I have seen that a lot of conflict is happening in this virtual setting. So when we go into this framework, this first step is understanding the root cause. In this step, you have to learn how to use probing questions. And this is where I recommend the why approach to understand the root cause of the conflict. We don't have time to do an exercise or go deeper on this, but there's a lot of material. LinkedIn Learning has a lot of material on conflict management. And thank you, Luisita. Yes, root cause analysis is very important here. So you have to, like any other problem solving, identifying the root cause is very important. There was another session I ran where, given the virtual setting now, and they were realizing a lot, they were seeing a lot of resistance to the change. And they were saying, you know, there were either the employees were resisting working from home or resisting working in the office. So a lot of resistance in different forms. And I had to say that there is no blanket formula to address conflict. You really have to go to the root, the main reason why there is resistance, why there is conflict. So that's a skill that we all have to learn. How do we get to the bottom of issues? And then the next step is you have to identify common goals. During conflict, quite more often than not, it will appear that the parties don't agree on anything or they are opposite end. And I know I really can imagine, and some more often than not, I'm also perplexed as to what's really driving the conflict. I have found myself in quite a lot of conflict where sometimes I'm successful and I'm able to pin down the reason. Sometimes I'm not, and it takes more conversation. But I have to say, leaders, we really have to be comfortable with individual conversations so that we are able to determine what's really what concerns our people, where they're coming from, and why they're doing what they're doing. That is correct. Yeah. So we really have to do that, though. It's really a challenge, and I tell you, nobody likes conflict. I don't like conflict, but and I think it comes with the territory. Being people managers, it will happen. So we have to determine the root cause so that we would be able to do the right intervention, and we have to determine what's the common goal. Because actually, and I think I was about to say this earlier. When there is conflict, we assume that they are in opposite ends and they want different things, but when we are able to really identify what's happening, the root cause, we have to be patient more often than not. We really have to be patient, do a lot of reflection, and also be open to consult other stakeholders. But when you are able to identify the commonality between the parties, it's a good first step to building trust and commonality. I remember one conversation this was a very stressful, and this was really a very emotional conflict. At the end of the day, the common desire really was to deliver excellence, to do better. It was really, there were just some areas that were not aligned, but we wanted a common goal. So having that openness about common goal, and you know, I always like the saying that win the war and not the battle. I always have to remind myself on that: win the war and not the battle. And also choose your battles. So I really like that reminder when there is conflict. And we have to come to a common discussion on what do we really want to achieve here. If we're not able to do that, we might have to take a break and then come again at a later time. So we have to have that EQ and really manage our emotion and also our thought process. And I agree with you, Jean. It helps to consult people, someone outside the team, for more objective perspective, because sometimes we can be very emotional, we can be very involved in the issue that we're sometimes not rational anymore. So we have to do that. Then you have to brainstorm solutions. So it's not really, okay, so we want to do this, and then be open to hearing the other person's perspective. What I have seen, I've been doing leadership programs for many years now. And what I have seen, there are many reasons why there is sometimes conflict in teams. But one of the many that I saw is really because we want to prove that we are right and the other person wrong. That is a goal, and not because I want us to understand and to come up to a common goal. So we have to arrest that ego and really go above that. So as leaders, we have to go beyond ourselves, and we have to have the courage that we will not get all the credit all the time. So as leaders is the good of the common of everyone, and not just ourselves. And there have been cases wherein the conflict is because of that personal agenda, that I want to prove he is wrong and I am right. So really, we have to go beyond that. When we're able to identify the common goal, and when we're able to humbly and courageously brainstorm solutions, we're able to address the conflict of the problem. I agree with you. Identifying the source is already half solved. Yes, sometimes it takes time. Or not sometimes, often it takes time identifying the root cause, because it can sometimes be evasive to the people. Sometimes we react strongly against something, and I'm not sure if you have found yourself in that situation. I have found myself sometimes in that situation. I react strongly, and I'm not able to clearly articulate or understand where I'm coming from. So it takes some reflection on what are my concerns about this situation. So we sometimes need help, right? So it takes process. We have to be patient with the process, but we need to face that comes with the territory of being people managers. So resolving conflict is critical to team productivity, and during change especially, because that's when conflict arises, especially now that we are in this virtual setting. So those were some skills. It can be a long program, giving feedback, receiving feedback, or conflict management. But I just had to emphasize that what I have seen in the past weeks or months was really because of this. It was more than just the tool. It was not really just about what technology do we use. It was really about the communication, and what was really causing that was not able to give feedback, and not also able to arrest conflict in a timely manner. So I really made sure that we talk about it here, because it's very important now in this virtual world of work. Now let's go to online meetings. So of course we talked about what do we need to lead or work effectively. Now let's zoom in to the online meetings and video conferences, because I think every day we are now doing this, right? So being able to lead virtual meetings is also very important, because that's when we are able to address, or when we are able to talk about issues. So when you are running virtual meetings properly, as effective as face-to-face meetings, it can increase participation and it can improve outcomes. So how do we do that? I think I have seen some sharing earlier about your challenges or problems of online meetings. If you recall some of these challenges, please do type it in the chat box, and would be happy to talk about that. The other time I was in a conversation wherein I was talking, but they were not hearing me, and they thought I was able to get their feedback. So we had some delay, and it somehow sometimes we get irritated, and we had to address that irritation before we were able to move forward. So that can also happen. Okay, so there are many challenges, and I think you have seen the video of was it the CNN news reporter where he had kids come into the room. A lot of challenges. So let's talk about this. Audio problems. Okay, so we're now going into the practical issues. You have people talking over each other. You have people that sharing screen is not working, or people are just quiet. People are not focusing attention. What do we do when this happens? Right, Jeremy. It was the BBC News. I remember that. So what do we do when this happens? For audio problems, be ready with a telephone line. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for some of the sharing here. In fact, before we had to go into this session, I also had to make sure that my phone, the data of my phone is on, just in case I will have long problems or delayed problems with my laptop. I would be able to switch immediately. So you should have that backup should you have audio problems. Now, talking about over each other, you can use the raise hand function. I'm not sure if you saw that when you logged in today. You call on participants by their name. You let participants know upfront that you will be asking everyone, but you also agree when will they talk, okay? Now, share screens, you can also send presentations in advance. Oh, by the way, we will send a copy of this presentation to everybody who are here. And then, of course, make sure that you understand page numbers, what are the titles of the documents, so that you would be looking at the same page at the same time. Then people not participating, use polls, have chat room, and I mentioned this earlier, use video so that you can see them. It also helps people focus on the discussion when the video is on, because when the video is off, I mean, we could just, step out of the room or do something else and not really focus. So you can do that. Not multitasking, people not paying attention. I really emphasize using the video, but also you set ground rules and you stick to them. So you discuss at the beginning, what are the ground rules, and also you send in advance the agenda so that you would be able to have some agreement. What if the attendees are not participating even during polls? I think it's also a matter of, is it required? Do they really have to answer, or is it a need? Or we can move away with some not answering the poll. So you can also decide on that, because some, a small number doing the responses is okay, but for the others, we're not able to move forward unless everybody, especially if it's a decision-making discussion and you're using poll to decide. Or, for example, where do we go after the ECQ is lifted for an outing? And everybody has to decide, then you make them answer it. Otherwise, you will not move forward. You have to agree that in the ground rules, you say 100% we need everybody to vote, or 100% we need everybody on the video. If there are people who are not doing the video, you have how do they call this? You have, as the host of the meeting, you switch it on. I was in a meeting where the host or the facilitator was switching the camera, the video of everyone. And whenever someone would switch off the camera, the facilitator or the host would send a message, we need you to switch on your video. So you really have to stick to the guidelines. If that is your guideline, you stick to that and you really make sure that people would follow through. Okay, so let's try to. Thank you for sending the emails. Yes, we will be sending a copy of this presentation. How do you maintain interest during online meetings? Of course, presentation helps. Whiteboards, if you're familiar with that. Before we went into this session, we were together with the PMAP professional staff. We were actually brainstorming to use breakout session, whiteboards, and we wanted to do that today, this afternoon. We wanted to really practice what we will share with you. But lately, I have seen internet problems. Yesterday, we were running a session and we had a lot of delays in the workshop because of internet problems. So I said, let's just move away with that. I don't want to waste the time of the people, and let's quickly go through the session. So I just said, I'll just discuss it. And if there could be another venue, they can probably practice that. So if you're not familiar with whiteboard, breakout session, if you're not familiar with annotation, you can also use that. So what do I mean with annotation? I'm not sure if your annotation is on, you can have stumps. So if you will look at my screen, I have a star. You can do that. So you can ask people to initiate icebreaker. So go to your annotation. Which of these are you using now, or which one is not working? You can do that as well. So there are a lot of tools that you can use to maintain interest during the meeting. So I will now clear my stars. You can use pictures. You can use para-verbal skills, your pace, your inflection. Thank you so much for those who called my attention earlier about my pacing. Be mindful as well about what's in it for me, because sometimes we ask people to join meetings when there's really nothing for them. So you make sure that the right people are in that meeting. Okay, so you have to be clear that what is the benefit for the people who are in that meeting. You send meeting summary, and also you clarify action items and follow through after the meeting, so that you would be able to keep the interest and the pacing as well, especially nowadays when we are not seeing each other and our meetings would talk about projects or tasks. So follow through, and then in the next meeting you go back to the minutes of the previous meeting. We do this, right? But now is the best time to be more intentional in doing these meeting guidelines. Yes, quiz icebreaker, a good icebreakers for virtual meetings. You can do that. You can also I like the sharing here, a lot of ideas. You can ask someone, you can assign roles, so you can have polls, you can have chat, you can insert questions. You can also assign roles, someone to take notes, someone who will be the timekeeper, who will monitor the participation, so that everybody is active in the meeting. And yes, good to check in how the participants are, especially if there's a gap between your last meeting, so that you would be able to find out where they are. Okay, so those are best practices that we have seen in the many years we've been doing this. Yes, we will be sending you a copy of this presentation. Let's go to the end. So I am now, I think my attention was just cold. So let's try to wrap it up. What resonated most with you today? If you can send it in the chat room. What struck you most? We had very limited time, and would have been lovely, would have been fantastic if we had time to deep dive on the topics. I think most helpful would be feedback giving and also conflict resolution. That would really be helpful. Thank you for sharing. Yet do not attack the person, address the behavior. Thank you for sharing, Patricia. For the others, what resonated most with you today? What struck you most in our discussion? And also, what's one commitment that you will make or you will apply after this? Thank you. Yes, the SBID. There is a lot of materials and giving feedback. You can do that. You can look at that and really practice. I often encourage parents or the ones with children, spouses, to practice giving feedback using that framework. It's good to do that, and even your family, your children, if you can train them on giving feedback, that would be fantastic as well. Very good preparation when they go to the world of work. Yes, thank you. Conflict resolution, virtual, being intentional, being deliberate in giving feedback. You really have to. It's so easy to just, open the meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning and then forget them the rest of the day. But you have to check in. You give an assignment on where are you, what support do you need. So you really have to. Yes, agree on what tools to use. And later on, I will ask the professional staff, those who said that your team is an expert on tools. I would love to hear that. That's going to be a fantastic discussion as well. So thank you so much for your sharing. Before we go into our Q&A, I would just like to invite everybody to join us in PMAP. We have what we call the Leadership Development Committee, and this is where you would learn a lot of giving feedback, managing conflict, and we have a lot of programs for leadership development. Be a mentee now. This is free. Join us in LeadCom. Send your email, your application to Ishi. She's with us right now, and her email address is here. You will have access to our HR experts, to our leader experts, our business experts. You may have probably been following PMAP and you have seen the webinars of these leaders. You will have the opportunity to learn from them, and you will have the opportunity to be mentored by these experts. So join us and send your email now. Be part of LeadCom, and we will be seeing you in the number of exciting programs, exciting training sessions that we have designed for you. So contact Ishi and send your email to Ishi so that we can also get back to you for the next steps. But that's really very important, especially nowadays. Connect with fellow leaders, connect with the community of leaders. If you're not a PMAP member, we can talk about how you can be a PMAP member. So just really contact us. There's a survey as well after the webinar where we will also know more about your what you hope to learn in future sessions. So answer the survey, what we did well and what we can do to improve. So do answer the survey at the end of the webinar. So we're now on our Q&A. So I will open the Q&A box and let's see. Oh, there's a suggestion here. You know, this is fantastic. Ishi, you might be seeing this, a webinar where parents and children can join. Yeah, I think I like that. Being a parent myself, I would really also be interested to join that. Yes, for those who do not want to be mentioned, that's perfectly okay. Yes. Do not worry about over engaging. Thank you so much. And yes, it's so perfectly okay to have online kumustahan with your employees. This morning, I think one of my teammates is here in our session. We had a game. It was just a game, and we had fun. Yesterday we had kumustahan, and we check in what's working well for you. So yes, be intentional. You do that. It could either be one-on-one. So schedule one-on-one sessions, 15 minutes, 30 minutes with your team members. Do also a group kumustahan. Some companies I see that they intentionally assign people to buddy up. So let's say Juan de la Cruz and Jose Rizal, they are the partners for this week. So they will check in on each other. And being the manager, you check in, were you able, how is Juan de la Cruz? So that they will also be accountable for their teammates. So I have seen that, and that was fantastic as well. This evening, we have our social night with my team members, and that's also a fantastic activity. Yes, certificates would be issued. I think you can request. So there was an email. We can also send that email to you if you want to have certificate. Okay. Yes, e-certificates. Time interval for follow-up when you delegate tasks. You can actually, when you're delegating tasks, you can agree. So you can agree on, so this is what you were going to do, and you were clear on the what, the why, and the how, and then you agree. When would be a comfortable time for you, for us to talk about this again? So you agree on that, and you don't just impose. And then you say, the team member would say, 2 days from now. That might be too long. And you say, would it be, how about in a day? Let's just have a quick check-in, a 15-minute check-in where you are, so that if you have challenges, we would be able to come together to a resolution. Oh yeah, okay, 15 minutes tomorrow is okay. Or if there's low scale, you might need to check in more frequently. So you agree. Don't just, pop out of the blue. All of a sudden you're calling, just, kumusta na yung pinapagawa ko? Nangyayari ba? No, you have to come to an agreement. I'll check in with you at 1 o'clock. Let's talk about what's going to happen. Or let's have a call. We're having a meeting now. Let's have another meeting at 2 o'clock. And this is what we expect to finish during this time frame. So you have to be intentional. You have to clarify the expectations. So set that before you do check-in. Don't just call out of the blue unless it's an emergency. So best if you are able to agree on when you will check in, okay? And then how can you measure productivity, especially if there are no instruments that you can use? You agree on output. Do not, I would have to say, there are many schools of thought, okay? There are different schools of thought here, but focus on the output, okay? So especially work from home, and I mentioned this earlier, not all of us has the capability to invest on instruments or technology. So agree on the output, and that's productivity. You also have to be open to the fact that there would be a dip in productivity and morale as well. This is a major change that everybody is facing. And when there's change as huge, as unprecedented as this, we will go through a lot of emotional roller coaster, which will have an effect on our level of productivity. So you have to be mindful where your people are in this relation to the major change they're facing. Are they doing well now, or are they still struggling? And so therefore that would have an effect on their productivity. And you also check in, where are you now, how are you, what can we do, and then be mindful of what can they finish. So if they are now really have adapted and they're so committed to the new normal, then ask them if they're interested to do any projects, and you might just really see the productivity soar high. But be mindful of the ones who are still struggling with this change that we are all facing. Just to share with you, before the announcement this morning, a lot of people that I was talking with were so eager to go back, and they were so excited to have face-to-face meetings, to do deliverables in the office. And when the announcement happened, they went back to the difficulty stage. If you're familiar with reaction to change, where people would be anxious, would have emotions, negative emotions, they went back to that. It's been 6 weeks. They have found their new habits. They have established their new technology. They have established their new processes, but still they were eager to go back. And then the news came out this morning, and then they're back again to letting go. They're back again to being confused, being disoriented, and that has an effect on their productivity. So just be mindful of where your people are. Okay. How can you ensure cooperation from employees without connectivity? I would presume that this is connectivity about internet. And I would presume that we have ways of contacting them. I would love to hear about other perspectives. So the question here is, how can we ensure cooperation from employees without connectivity? And as I mentioned, I am assuming that this is about internet connectivity. If we have phones, pick up the phone. You know what? This new normal that we have now, what worked for me was I picked up the phone. I don't just rely on internet, on the tools. I pick up the phone and talk to the person, hear the voice of the person. So if you need to go on a phone call, do that and have a conversation. And there can also be, I hope it's a smartphone, because you can actually have a group call using a smartphone. So you can also do that and have team calls using the phone. You don't need internet for that. Okay. So if I need to refer to a certain matter, I forget if it's changes, if it was Viber, if it was email, or call. Okay, I know this. I have seen this a lot as well. If it's a matter, if it's an issue, an agenda that we have to remember, I discourage using instant messaging. Go on email, have a document about it. Or if you have a file sharing, if you have a common folder, put it there. So you can have, okay, this is the new policy. You send it via Viber, and also say, I save it in this folder for future reference. So anything that has to be remembered, that has to be observed, after you talk about it, make sure you put it, you save it somewhere. And that's exactly what we are talking about when we said about communication governance. So you need to have a policy. What kind of information is for Viber, email, or Messenger? What kind of information should be saved in this folder? You have to have an agreement. Okay. So questions on certificates? Yes. Yes, do not worry about over-engaging. Better to over-engage now. Kumustahan? How do you call out members who you think are sleeping during a virtual meeting? That's why a video is very important. And you have to agree that when you go into a virtual meeting, videos will be switched on. So your house rules, your ground rules, you have to discuss that and align before you start any virtual meeting. If they're quiet, if they're not participating, call them out. Then we talked about the SBID framework. You use that and be specific. What was the behavior? What was the impact? And what can they do? So this is a situation where we can use the feedback framework. So use that. That would help you. My right bossy employee not to respond, especially after office hour. If it's yeah, if it's not an urgent and it can wait until tomorrow, yes. If it's urgent and you really have to address it now, let's address that. Let's do that. Um, you yes, Sir Albert. Yes, so join Leadcom. I was reading the chat while I was answering. I was multitasking, as you can notice. But yes, we also have to take care of our own well-being. So if it's beyond our office hours and we want to protect ourselves, if it's something that can wait until tomorrow, probably out of courtesy, you say, sir, mom, I'll reply to you tomorrow. Thank you for understanding. For the manager, for the leader manager, we also have to protect the well-being of our people during this time. So be mindful as well about the work hours of our people. If it's urgent and can wait until tomorrow, then let's give them time. Let's wait until tomorrow. Right? Okay. What How large can virtual teams be? Would really depend, because there are some teams that are just so large because they need to come together. It would really depend on what is the objective of the team. There's really no rule in terms of how large it should be. So this would be difficult. This would really depend on what are you trying to achieve. Can employees working from home claim for overtime? I would have to say yes. Of course, be mindful of your policy as well. You have to go back to what are your company policies. So get back to that. Um, if an employee is still struggling, not productive, and is not focused, and is lonely, and there are emotional issues, you have to intervene as a manager. You need to go into a conversation with the person and be compassionate. Okay, so be compassionate. Understand where the person is coming from, what is happening, and during this time, I say that let's focus on our people. It's not an easy time. So I know I am with everybody that the work, the business is really important. But let's focus on our people and let's make sure that they are doing well. And let's give them the best that we can to make them manage this period. So as a manager, if I were in your shoes, I would get into the call, have a conversation with my employee, and the conversation is me about understanding what's happening, understanding how I can help. Then I will set aside the task first. I will focus on the person first, what is happening. And then I later on, if the person is able to address the issues, then we will talk about work. But otherwise, we have to look at the person first. Does the superior have the right to reprimand or be angry to an employee if he's not responding to the chat messages after the office hour? I would have to say that there may be stories behind here. So this is really an expectation setting. This is really when you went into the virtual setting, you have to agree on when will you expect me to respond, what kind of messages are urgent, when is urgent. So you have to set that. You need to have a guideline so that you would be able to set everybody on the same page, so that if someone is not responding, you would have an understanding why. Or if the person demands an immediate response, you would also know why, and you would be able to set a common guideline on how to address that. So you need to have a discussion. Earlier, I mentioned about communication governance. That should go into that. Talk about expectations. When is urgent, and when should you reply, and when is it acceptable not to reply immediately? Because there could be many sides to this question, and I would want everybody to sit down and talk about and set expectations. Okay. Output based, you need to have a discussion. So how can members, how can employees be productive in terms of this output? Yes, you have to agree on what is the output, in what form, when do you want to see the output? Then that's the time that you would be able to talk about this person is productive in terms of output. So you don't just say call or do this document. As to when he's supposed to submit the document, you did not share. So you need to be clear on what is the output, when is the output. If you go back, if you remember that the chart I shared, the what, the why, the when, and the how, you have a discussion with that. What is the output that you describe? Why is that important? When do you expect that? And how do you, how is the in what form should the output be? You need to have a discussion. Now this is more required because there's just a lot of ambiguity nowadays. So you need to have a discussion in terms of how the output should look like. So you should do that. VideoCon, is there a dress code? I would also have to say, I have seen companies where even before this ECQ, they were already dressed down, as in I saw them in slippers in their office. So I would have to say you followed the culture of your company. So I have my earrings now, I comb my hair, I put on some powder. It's really because this is my culture. So what is the culture of your company? Then you try to observe that. So if it's you have dress code, you observe the dress code. Would be good to still observe that because that's your company culture. I can't say wear formal if that's not the culture, because as I have mentioned, I have seen companies where even before the ECQ, they were already wearing shorts and shirts and sandals in the office. So you can also do that. How to address, yes, Ishi, there's a question about renewal of mentee application. Please, I think Ishi, you're able to see this, so would be happy to see you. And I saw, I'm not sure if you will allow me to mention your name, and since I'm not sure, so I will not mention your name. But Ishi, there is a question about renewal of mentee application. We would be very happy to talk to you. So okay, thank you, Ishi. Okay, all right. Workload management. Yes, yeah, there's also a technique on we can also talk about that. Is it urgent? Is it important? I think many of us are familiar with that. And when we say urgent, what would happen if I don't do this task in 24 hours? What will be the repercussion? Is it serious? What's the level of effect? What would happen if I do not complete this task in 1 week? Top of mind, I'm just recalling this module that we have in terms of workload management. So yes, that would also be good. Very good suggestion. And Ishi and Jeff, and you can pick this up. Thank you. If your boss is attending different meetings and it's not transparent, SBID framework. I would use the SBID framework. I saw you attend X number of meetings this week with this, and that. But we are not hearing from you. You've been, we did not receive any update. The impact is we're in the dark about what's going to happen. So we have a lot of questions. So SBID, go to use the SBID framework. So you can use that. Does the staff have the right to ask superiors on updates? I think we can all ask. I would hope that the culture of the company is very open and we can entertain questions. So yes, we can ask. But I also just want to say that not all information, okay, being the leaders, and we have talked about this, we have to be mindful of when we should share, when we should share, what kind of information, how we should share it. So we also have to trust that our leaders will communicate at the right time in the proper venue. So let's also just be mindful of that as well, because not everybody that we have can be communicated right away to everyone right now. So there's also a proper timing, proper venue in our communication. So maybe you can say, are there communications that would require a different timing? So you can do that. Okay. Okay, I saw the I saw the question about mentor and the mentee program. Let's talk about that. Okay. All right. Okay, so dress code, I saw that. Thank you. I'm saying thank yous and questions. Okay, I think I've answered some of the questions. Not responding immediately. You have to, I mentioned this already, you should have a communication governance, set expectations. You need to have a conversation with your manager and also with your team members, what to communicate, when do you expect responses. Just to share with you, my teammate is very clear. At 5 o'clock every day, my office is closed. If you send me a message, unless it's urgent, I will not reply to you. So, and they know it. And my phone is also not online on weekends, unless it's urgent, unless you really need me now. When do we say it's not urgent? If the office will still run today, even if I don't respond to that. Otherwise, let's talk about it tomorrow when we return to work. And my people, I have family, and I have to set expectations when they will hear from me. I also have to respect the family of my teammates, and also make sure that they are also well and okay. So you need to set your expectations on that. Best set up the physical workspace at home. I was not able to see this earlier. It would be good if you have a private area. If you don't have a private area, you have to set the expectation with your family members. My family knows this. At certain hour of the day, I say, I will now log into work, and they know it. So again, with them, I set recommendation. If it's not urgent, I will be working. Otherwise, I will be out for break at this hour, for lunch at this hour, and then I will be off for work at this hour. So I also had to set that with them, given that I don't have a private room for my work. And I also had to sit down. You sit down with your family, with your children, with everybody in the house about behavior that you expect while you are working, behavior from you, behavior from them, what help you need from them. I need you to look after the child during this hour, and then let's agree that at this hour I will come in and take over from you. So you also need to set that. You in similar manner that you need to have expectations with your managers and with your team members, you also need to set expectations with your family members as well. What can you do? When can you do something, and how will you do it? You also have to set that, so that you would be able to minimize conflict. Now, if there are certain areas that's not clear, we have the SBID framework. Give the feedback so that you would be able to come up with the right intervention. Send more effective invites. You have to really make sure that your invite would communicate to me what's in it for me. So if the invite is not relevant for me, if the topic of the meeting is not relevant for me, I will not go. I might not be interested to attend. So clarify what's in it for me if I join that meeting. How to make others lead virtually. How to make other leaders lead virtually. I would presume, I'm not really sure what the question mean here, but I would presume that are there resistance in leading virtually, or do they need to develop their skills on leading virtually? And when we say leading virtually, what aspect of that? Is it communication? Is it using the tools? Is it what aspect? So good to zoom in what area of leading virtually will they need help on. So I remember I shared with you earlier about the assessment that a friend of mine did. She's an HR manager So she did a survey across the whole organization. And that was really to check in, what are they doing wrong in the virtual world of work, and what are they doing well. So from there, she was able to get information, what their leaders are doing right and what their leaders are doing wrong. And she came up with the best intervention to address that. Okay, so recording of the webinar. I think, yeah, I think this is on Facebook and also on YouTube. So yes, there is recording. And how do you address, I'm on my last question. How do you address boss calling on weekends, sending messages up to midnight and beyond? SBID, go to the feedback framework, have a conversation with your boss, communication governance, sit down with them. And yeah, what's the impact on you? And have a discussion, have an open discussion with your boss. Okay, so all right, so we're down to the last minute. I would just like again to remind everybody, do be a mentee now, join us in LeadCom. I was a mentor, if I remember it correctly, in 2015. Fantastic experience, really very rich experience. I really appreciate all the mentors. They're doing it out of their own heart to develop and train leaders. I really learned a lot. Much of what I learned is because of these leaders. Of course, I still have a lot to learn, but I really appreciate all the mentors that I had in LeadCom. Join us now. And also, there is a GMM on April 29. So it's a virtual GMM. So do join us there. And sign up now. It's virtual. And we will hear from, I think Michelle is a speaker in that. She's also one of the mentors. Fantastic. Really, I'm learning a lot from Michelle. Sir Albert is also with us here today, this afternoon. Sir Albert, good thing I did not know that you were with us. Otherwise, I would have been. But really, I love learning from Sir Albert as well. So thank you so much. Thank you to Richard, Ishi, Jeff, Carol, Alex, and everybody in PMAP for preparing and managing all these webinars. Thank you so much to President Loy, Director Renee, our PMAP officers, our board of trustees. Thank you everybody for joining. You know, I want to say thank you for being open to learn. You will not be with us this afternoon if you are not open to push the boundaries and to learn. And that is a significant, a wonderful character of a leader. So thank you so much for coming in, for joining us, for being open to learn, and for sharing as well. There were a lot of sharing in our session, and I do hope that we will see you again in the future. So thank you so much. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the weekend and find time to rest and recover. And we'll see you all in our GMM on April 29. So have a good day and enjoy the weekend. Be a mentee now, join us in LeadCom.